Dennis Wainscott. He is a minister from Hillsdale. He was going to be with us this evening, and I had asked the new minister from North Adams, but he's out of town. So Dennis has Celtic ministries. Now that might sound a little out there. He's a regular Protestant ministry, but he is from of Irish descent, so that's where that name comes from. So let's stand and Dennis will give us.
Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you, Lord, for this night. We ask you, Lord, to help the trustees, help Mark, and help the secretary, Lord, as they go forth to bring honor to you through their work that they do. We ask you, Lord, to touch each and every one here, Lord. Lord, let your wisdom and your knowledge, let all those things which would pertain to our everyday life, Lord, that you would overlook them, look us and help us and bless us, Lord, in Jesus' blessed name. Amen.
We'll give the pledge. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I need to make a correction to the agenda right off the bat. I put August. So that should be the 10th month, the 11th day. And as otherwise, with that correction, do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
Yeah, make a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Do I have a second? Second. Thank you, Stephanie. Mrs. Scott. And all in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Is Commissioner Benzing in the house? I do not see him, so we'll move on. Is Mr. Gary Leininger of the Road Commission here? I do not see him. So I will open the floor for general public comment, and let me explain the next section. Stephanie, many of you received a text from me, or perhaps on Messenger, and requesting your presence here because Stephanie has a matter regarding the elections, regarding the tabulator that is quite concerning to her, and she wants to present, and then we would welcome any information on that. So we will have a public comment on that specifically in that section, but before we do that, we'll open the floor for public comment of whatever. We allow 5 minutes each. As long as you're orderly about whatever you want to talk about. So do we have any public comment? Hearing none, we'll move to the elections tabulator part of the agenda. And Stephanie, you have the floor. Oh, I would like to introduce, some of you maybe haven't met Stephanie Scott yet, and it wasn't so much that I wanted to introduce, but this elections matter. I think many of you would share my concerns, and I believe Stephanie and I are pretty well on the same page as this. Haven't had a lot of discussion with some of the other board members. They may feel similarly, but the election of 2020, in my estimation, was very, very, very fraudulent. Now that does not mean that the people that ran elections in Hillsdale County specifically did things wrong. There were many, many, many ways to cheat in the election, and during the public comment portion, there might be some of you that have greater knowledge that would want to comment to that after, and I think Stephanie will comment to that a little bit. So that is pretty much what this is about. Some of you might have been concerned that this was about the school election. It isn't, not at all specifically, but Stephanie, I think with that introduction, that's about what I wanted to say there. So you have the floor. Thank you.
Stephanie Scott, clerk here in Adams Township. This is now the 3rd election, having run since I started in December. And what's flagged me on this whole thing, and I've been following the news. Actually, you know what? I'm going to start out with a question. How many of you guys have worked in an election here in Michigan? Okay. And, okay, that's kind of what I wanted to know, just to kind of gear this toward you guys. So when I started, The first election was in March, and I do want to say this has nothing to do with the election that is coming up. It is completely nonpartisan. I fully believe that these elections have to be fair, they have to be honest, or any ensuing big debate is absolutely worthless in this whole thing. We cannot have these elections being tossed out and pushed up the line to somebody else to regulate, monitor, decide, whatever the case may be. So I put a chart over here. This is what started me in March, and you'll probably remember, Pat, because the way these elections work, the initiative comes out, the clerk is notified, and then we have to run what's called a public accuracy test, meaning that tests the tabulator, which I'm going to show you in a minute, but that's the tabulator right over there. So we have to run a public accuracy test, and that should be to test the machine and the combinations that it could possibly see and make sure it counts it correctly, right? So when we do that, the election commission for the township, which consists of Mark, me, and Pat, we have to, and this is all public knowledge, any of you guys can come and watch this public accuracy test, but we run it maybe usually, after a board meeting or whatever the case may be. But when I first got the information on this election, trying to decide if I should go in chronological order. No, I'm going to tell you what flagged me on this whole thing. So when this question came out the first time in March, it was 2 questions, and it was for the North Adams millage, or 8 millage for increasing for whatever, it doesn't matter. It was 2 questions. And if you're going to have 2 questions on a ballot, it can be voted with a yes vote, a no vote, fill in both circles, so a double vote, or nothing vote. And that can happen on the front side, and it can happen on the back side. So what I tried to illustrate and kind of give you a general idea, here's your yes, yes, a yes, no, a yes, nothing, a no, yes, no, no. So these are the combinations, up to 16 here, right? That's just on how you're going to vote the answer. Then there's also a chance of the barcode being covered on the front, barcode being covered on the back, a random mark, and a stray mark. I'm not sure county's determining that, so I don't know how they just, stay with the differences between a random and a stray mark. But right in here, there's 16 ballots that should test this machine in this election to see, minimum, 16 minimum. 22, the mathematical query or code on it, or equation would be 4 to the 2nd power, because you got 4 ways to answer on 2 questions. So minimum 16, and theoretically, all these could happen on each one of these. But let's just go with there should have been 22 ballots to test this machine in March. And when I got my test deck, I had 7 in there. And I know some of them were these barcode covers, and they're also going to be the no-nos, or I should say blanks on both of them, which is right here, because the machine should be programmed to kick those out and at least give a person a chance to vote again. But I got 7 ballots in March to test this tabulator. And I brought it up to the county clerk. I said, that's not enough ballots to test this machine. And she, whether she didn't understand, whether she didn't want to talk to me about it, she just said, that's what we get. And I'm like, who decides how many ballots to actually test this machine? And I kept hearing over and over again, the print house, the print house. I'm like, what do you mean the print house? The print house, apparently the one that prints all these ballots, is the one that determines how many are going to test this machine. And so we went round and round and round. It came time for the public accuracy test. We ran it. Mark and I are signed off in our paperwork that we contested it. It ran the 7 ballots the way the county told me it should run it, but it wasn't enough. So we wrote it that we did not agree with the number of ballots, because I didn't know what else to do coming in as a new clerk. It was crazy just trying to get everything set up. So anyway, March election ran, no big deal. Talked to the county clerk afterwards and still tried to have that discussion with her that it wasn't enough. And she still would not go there with me or try to understand the mathematics. And the whole argument is, if we're not testing the tabulator, then how do we know it works, right? Which will lead to the next question of, are they actually online? So, this was November, right? And then what interesting sort of happened, he requested, well, I'm going to back up to February, because just prior to this, I got notice from the Michigan Bureau of Election that I could destroy the chain of custody on the November election, meaning snip the tags. I have anyone who wants to see it. I've got the letter here from there. And they sent it out to all the county clerks, said, go ahead, you don't need to keep them in their secure ballot bags, you can break it, go save them however you want. So it's scary in itself because, and I can't clarify if it's my responsibility or if it's the whole township board, and that's part of the reason I'm bringing it up to the township board. We have a legal obligation to store these ballots and preserve them for 22 months. So now the definition, or the question is going to become, is it just putting them in a bag downstairs in the basement where anyone can come in and do anything, or should they be stored with their chain of custody sealed, right?
Put them in the trunk.
Put them in the trunk. So, Adams Township, I did not go down and break that seal. They're the same way they were when they were turned in on whatever date that election was. So that was kind of, in the back of my head as I'm going through this election. They also, another strange thing in March, pertaining back to November, was they wanted my EPB stick. So when you use these tabulators, I'm sure you guys remember them. They look like this. This screen comes out. This is the brains of the whole thing, right? And you can see it's all sealed up and all this kind of stuff. This sits in here. This is the tabulator, which I should have opened this, but there's some USB ports in here. And so they're used for programming the machine, and they're also programmed for a modem. So there's 2 EPB sticks. They wanted my EPB stick back. They're just little USB sticks, $10, $5 online. They're nothing. But they insisted on getting them back to program this March election on. Thinking to myself at the time, that's really strange. Why don't they just send out a new EPB stick? And we were instructed to delete what was on that EPB stick. No! That comes into the whole question of the 22 months retention. Is it just the paper ballots, or is it all the electronic correspondence?
Everything.
I will argue it's everything. So I obviously protected myself and maybe saved a copy before turning it in. So I got my reprogram and reran this machine with my contention on how many were actually tabulating this whole thing, right? So then we go on, meanwhile the Michigan Bureau of Election is sending out newsletters regarding handling all the disinformation, and how to handle FOIA requests, because there's FOIA requests circulating. One prominent one is called True North, and we'll talk about it later tonight. They are asking for all election documentations back for 2020, 2018, and 2016. So it's not like people aren't asking for it. So anyway, the Michigan Bureau of Election is giving us this advice on how to deal with that, whatever. More money is due for the tabulators. So I should talk about the tabulators for a minute. Those came to the townships, and I can't verify for sure that it's the entire state of Michigan, but they came under a grant program in 2018, the Help America Vote HAVA grant, and came into our possession, I believe, 2018. So we had grant money, in June they're telling us, hey, you're gonna have the rest of the money due, but that's not overly relevant. Other than these things aren't paid for, we're still using them. Then I got a notice in July that the Michigan Office of the Auditor General was performing an audit. I don't know exactly what that meant, or I didn't do too much with that. Then, where it gets interesting, at least for me, in July 14, I got an email from the Michigan Bureau of Elections, and they wanted us to turn in our tabulators, go drop them off at the county clerk's office, and they're going to do maintenance on the machine. I'm like, I'm not turning in my tabulator because I don't know what you're doing to it. So I just ignored it. Again, I got that email if anyone wants to read that. I got an email a day later from the deputy clerk for Hillsdale County asking me to turn in my tabulator, and I said I wasn't going to. 7/22, so about a week later, we got a reminder to bring in the tabulator and the touchscreen units, and a request to upgrade our modems. And I'm like, what are we using modems for? We don't have Wi-Fi. We don't plug in. Tabulator sits right there. You can see there's no wall connection for Wi-Fi. What do we need a modem for? So I just ignored it and said, nope, I'm not upgrading my modem. And, okay, so that's 7/22. Then, on 7/26, so Deputy Clerk is Abe Dane. Nice guy. I like him a lot. We can have a good conversation. I was at a Bible study with one of the local township people here, and Abe did talk. We talked afterwards, and he asked me if I was going to bring in my tabulator, and I said I was not. And he said to me, that the tabulator has a cell card in it. So I'm just gonna play dumb on the whole thing. So what do you need a cell card, Abe? He's thinking, you know, that's all I said. He says, yeah, it will ping off the cell towers. I'm like, really? So I just played dumb, let it go. But I said I'm still not bringing it in. So, one day later, he sent another email. They're going to perform a file hash test. So again, they want me to drop off my machine, not be there, but I can be there if I want. But to me, someone's sticking little USB ports in that machine. I have no idea what they're doing, no control over it, whether it's deleting, whatever it's doing, and that's the reason I didn't bring it in. So they're performing another test, and supposedly the file hash test will test traffic on the machine, but that's all I know. So then, 8/16 comes around, August 16, we're getting ready for this election, and Abe reached out to me and he advised me that they're preparing the test deck for this next election, and he said, I know you had problems with how many were in the March one. If you want additional ballots, let me know, they'll be on the township's expense. Well, the one question to ask is, how many questions on the ballot? 1. How many, I said, how many were you gonna give me? 7. So they were giving me 7, that's the yes, the no, the yes and the no, the nothing, bar covered, random mark, straight mark. 7 test ballots for a 1-question election. Obviously, a 2-question election needs more than 7. I said, obviously you guys can see this. And that's why I feel North Adams is in a unique position since November, because we've had 2 small elections. It's very clear that 7 for this should not be the same. It should not be the same number for 7 for that one. So now I've got this tabulator that likely has information on it from, I don't know, because I had to reprogram that for March election. So whether the USB stick I stuck in there deleted anything from November, I don't know. But I had to run my election. Yes?
You said it pings off the tower. That means you don't have to plug them into the internet.
Correct. Correct. So we'll talk about that in a little bit.
Satellite signal.
Yep. So, where it's at. My public accuracy test for August, 7, yep, I'll take it. Then,
You were at the USB drive.
yep, USB drive sticking in there. Oh, that was the other interesting thing. For this election, they didn't ask for my USB stick back like they did in March. They wanted my USB stick for the November election. They asked for it here. This election, they did not ask for it, which I thought was just kind of interesting, because that was my first observation. What do you need that stick back for? So now I have, okay, and this maybe is a little bit more petty on this whole thing, because I'm going through my head, what do I do? What are my rights as a clerk? Is my obligation to truly do a fair election? Do I have any recourse? And I don't know. I don't have the answer on that yet. I am working with some outside attorneys. I've been talking to the township attorney on this whole thing to define what my role is as clerk. And I got a list of election laws, and it's for registering people, and I don't have any problem with that. But to me, it comes down to, am I responsible for retaining records? And if that 22 months, what's the actual language in the state document as far as retaining the electronic issues? So meanwhile, I let Abe know. I said, I am thinking about running a hand count. We have a small township. It's like, what, 1,900 people voting, 60–70% turnout. It's, what, 1,000, 1,200 ballots with 1 question. Easy. Well, I let him know that. He said, you can't. And the next day, I got a threatening letter from the Michigan Bureau of Elections saying that I can't do a hand count and that I need to turn in my tabulator for maintenance. So I've ignored it. I've done nothing with it. I just think it's a really strange progression of events on this whole thing.
Ma'am?
Yes.
Are they restricting a hand count, like, as in saying that it is illegal, or are they
Yes.
just prohibiting it?
They say that it is not possible because of a,
So you can't hold an election without their electronic device,
Yep.
period?
Yep, that's what they're saying. That's what our township attorney said. So there's language, I don't think I printed it off, but I meant to. There's language that says the township board can abandon a tabulator, right? And this is statute, and I don't know the number, and I can get it to anyone who's interested. But it says the township can abandon the tabulator upon a majority vote on the board. And then our township attorney, James Fink, came back and said, well, that is nullified by section 6. That says something to the extent when the Secretary of State implements a uniform voting system. And so that has been implemented. We have a uniform voting system, which is apparently this machine or a Dominion machine. So this is a Hart machine. For you guys following the election, there's Dominion and there's Hart. This one in particular is a Hart machine.
Dominion doesn't have any machines, it's what's on there is Dominion software.
It probably
That's-
says
that's the problem.
Dominion
Dominion
on the outside of the machine though.
So, my question is that, what is the state law? See, the problem is the state's, the state secretary basically broke the law by sending all these ballots out. I mean, all the computers were fixed. So what does the state law say? Because this is basically a constitutional law. What we have to do is voting. And so they broke that. They broke the law. So I guess your duty is to find out what the state law is and say, hey, screw you guys, because you're breaking, we're gonna stick with the state of Michigan law. Legal policy.
And that's what I'm working on. I've got a set of outside attorneys along with Mr. Fink, who I asked him point blank if he's comfortable representing the township on an issue, and he indicated he would help me find someone else. But that, I don't know what the ramifications are, or, you know, what our plan is. My intent tonight is merely to show you tabulators were not tested properly for this election. Not saying anything went wrong. This number is not gonna match that number for test X. And if you wanna talk for a second about November, because I have been asking the county clerk, how many ballots tested the machine in November? So if you guys remember those ballots, and I'm not even gonna try to do the math because it's crazy. There were 9 questions. Some of the questions had up to 12 ways to answer it. Some of them had down to 3. But if you do the math conservatively, because it's exponential, it should be like 200 million ballots to test the tabulator for every possible combination that could have happened in November. So if you can, you know, if I can show you that these tabulators were not tested on our 2 little tiny ones here, and we'll talk about it here a little bit more about the modem and how this stuff works, and that these things were potentially online, we got an issue with elections, and it's super easy to show it here in Adams Township based on these 2 tiny elections since November. So I want to talk for a minute just a little bit about how these machines work. Actually, I suppose I can open this up. This is the part, so when we get ready to program these things, we get this wonderful little instruction manual here.
So what happened to the old machines that we used to do mechanically?
I know, yes.
We bring those back?
That's
Did
correct,
they get
Pat.
junked?
They've been jumped.
Junk them?
They jumped them.
So if you can see this, on the inside of these machines right here, we got 2 USB ports. So when we go to set up these elections, and so this is what I'm pulling from the paperwork that we get to set up these elections. I don't know if I'm talking to you guys in the board, but try to stand over here. This is called the Logic and Accuracy Test Supplemental Procedure Manual. So this takes us through all the steps on how to program the machine, get it ready for the next election. And you get to it here, and I don't, how far depth to go into connectivity, probably other people can talk a little more IT than me. So county clerk tells me there's a cell card, a cell stick, which would be a SIM card, just like your cell phone. If you don't have a SIM card in, your cell phone's not gonna work. That to me implies that within this this is where all the hardware is on this, that somewhere inside this thing, potentially, is a SIM card that would work just like your cell phone and put it online. When you go and set this up, when prompted, remove the Verity key, that's the programming, and reconnect the modem. So there's in several spots in here, so when you set up this machine, there's a modem that's tied to this thing. And you unplug it, you do it in a certain order, into the wall, out of the wall, modem goes in, whatever. Worst case scenario, there are 2 ports of entry to get into that machine. Best case scenario, that the modem's still plugged in. There is connectivity, at least in that USB port. If Abe is incorrect in his terminology, that there is not a cell card in there, then it would just be that modem. Does that make sense? Potentially 2, there's at least one, for sure. And here's all the setup. Anyone wants to look at it, here's where all the modems kick in and show this thing. So then I was like, okay, now again, what do I do with this, right? So I took it a little further and I was doing some research, and I found, it's called a document review of the Heart Intercivic System. That's that. And what apparently they did back in 2007 is sent these machines out basically for someone to troubleshoot them. And they were two folks at the University of California, Berkeley. And I didn't print the whole thing because it was 100 and some pages. No, they actually came out and it appears gave some real input on it, because there is a portion, so it's called the Rally Documentation Procedures. And this Rally portion of the machine is hardware, and it connects the actual physical ballot going in to the tabulator. And they actually say in here, the documentation for the Rally operation appears to describe normal operation adequately. We were not able to test the Rally tally connection in our walkthrough. The lack of troubleshooting information in the Rally operations manual, however, suggests that if unpredictable events do occur, it would be difficult to deal with them. For instance, the Rally operations manual warns on page 60 not to use a recovery MBB servo, whatever, this is maybe all IT stuff, but also unclear describing basic setup, including, for instance, instructions for connecting MBBs to tally. This procedures include optional human phone confirmation of the number of MBBs read by the Rally station. Based on a review of the procedures specified in the documentation, Rally operations also raise audibility, security, and accuracy concerns which were addressed on these sections. So, next section, accuracy issues in Rally. Another part in here was about connectivity. So this was back in 2007. You know, okay, maybe they changed it. I don't know. Just think it's interesting that someone has got it documented how the hardware works in this thing, where the weak spots are, and it's a connectivity issue, right? So I went and did a little further, and I found basically it's the RFP, the request for proposal. So when Michigan was getting ready to buy these machines, I assume it was them that put out, this is Exhibit A, voting system hardware technical requirements. And it's, you know, it's a fairly lengthy document, but if you're going to bid out a project or a piece of equipment, usually someone's really specified what they're looking for. And section 1.D.2, so the ENR system shall support the following transmission mediums for reporting unofficial returns on election night directly from the precinct tabulators to the EMS system. So the EMS system is what's sitting at the county clerk's office. It's the mastermind, it's the brain, big brain computer for all this stuff. So this is saying that it needs to report unofficial terms directly to the EMS system via cellular modem, analog dial-up modem, database import, manual reading, tabulator, memory devices. And this on here says, yep. And then, so then Hart comes back and says, yep, you can do it by modem, you can do it by Ethernet, meaning plug in the wall, or by Wi-Fi. So this is just kind of an interesting thing to read through, that is one of the requirements for these machines, is that they're online during election night. That's scary. So then, I was like questioning myself, maybe it doesn't matter if these things are online, right? That's what I was told as clerk, that they're not online. I didn't think too much of it. But if you go over, my job as clerk is to assure everybody this is the safest and securest election ever. And you go over to their nice little propaganda piece, and very specifically, voting machines cannot be connected to the internet during ballot tabulation. Only after countings are finished and a paper record has been generated will some jurisdictions connect the machines to the internet and send unofficial results to the county clerk. There's no evidence that voting machines in Michigan have ever been compromised or that votes have been changed. Okay, but I've got instructions for the night of the election, where I showed you here, that specifically say plug in the modem after it's back in the wall and unplug it again before you. So it's all in there. So, and the thing is, how many of us clerks know IT stuff enough to say, oh my gosh, maybe this, shouldn't be plugged in on this whole thing. I'm concerned they're online. And then what ties it all in and makes it worse is I had been asking who's printing our ballots, and county clerk's office would not answer the question to me. I finally got an answer, and because I wanted to know how many, and and they told me they didn't have a total. They only had an invoice, which is strange because you'd think there'd be a total number of ballots on the invoice. But I did find out it's election source. So I went on and was doing a little, they're the ones that print them. They print ours anyway. I tried to do a little research to find out how they're filed, if they're public, if they're private, tax filing. All it says, they got a big thing, over 100 years of experience. Not how many people, you could have 100 people working there with your experience. You don't know. We don't know who any of these people are on this whole thing.
What country are they based in?
Supposedly, gosh, what was it?
China?
No, it's tied to Canada, but I think it's a Texas company, if I remember. But, so I was only looking for the tax information, tax filing. Come to find out, these are the guys that Dominion contracted to do the maintenance on Dominion machines. So if these guys are tied into a Dominion, and they're deciding which ballots they're using to to test our machines, I don't know. I don't know who was going to do maintenance on that machine.
Software is Dominion. Okay.
So, with all that said, that's been my journey for the last month. What raises my concern is that there is inconsistencies on this with what the state, what the county is telling us. We have an amazing ability here to show this. And as far as what the next steps are, I'm still working with some attorneys on this whole thing. I came here tonight to share this information. I'm happy to share any of it with any of you, any of my resource. But I am asking, what I want to do is ask the board tonight to vote with me and make a motion to abandon this tabulator for this November election. Again, I don't have the confirmation that we can legally do that, but I think it's a vote that needs to be taken. And then as I'm working on this, and I've got to know before October 26th, because my public accuracy test for this little one is October 27th.
Got an idea. Why don't you do both, paper and this one?
I don't want to stick anything in there to
No,
reprogram
I'm
it.
just saying, when they come in to vote, give them a paper ballot, and have,
No, they're always paper. They're always paper ballots. But when I set this machine up for the public accuracy, I stick a USB port in there to program it.
I know that in Canterbury Township, they put in a machine in the tablets, and so, that's what they do in Canterbury. But to test the machine, of course, we're North Adams. We're not like, Detroit. Wayne
You don't want to take the risk of damaging.
I don't want it.
No, that's not what I'm saying.
It has to be programmed to count
No,
those
that's not what I'm
ballots.
saying. So let them vote on that, and then give them another ballot, a paper ballot, and put that in a box.
You don't get it.
Then you can,
You don't get it. When I set this up to run the public accuracy test, I have to plug in a USB port that programs the machine for this specific question for all, whatever combos.
I understand
It's
that.
programmed
I
for each
understand that.
election.
I understand that, then also let them do a paper ballot, besides that, then you can.
Always a
then you
paper
can
ballot.
match it.
No, there's always a paper ballot. A paper ballot goes in that machine.
What I'm talking about, here's a ballot, no, here's another ballot, and you vote in this, and drop it in this box over here, now we can compare the two.
There'd be no guarantee
This
that they
is a
would do
paper
that.
ballot.
You can't have double
We can't give two ballots out. That would be insane and absolutely
Well,
impossible.
what you can do is have, poll watchers out there taking people's, when they walk out.
There's gotta be
how
a
they
ballot.
vote.
We cannot give two ballots out for an
Do
election.
you want to take more questions right now, Stephanie, or not?
I think that's pretty much summarizes where I'm at.
You have hands up.
How do you compare? How do you compare it?
Hand count. I don't wanna compare at this point. I wanna find out what's on this machine before destroying
I know what's
anything.
on the machine.
Well, no, we
They can
don't.
switch it. 51-49.
We don't, but we need the proof. We can't just make accusations. And that's the thing. Regardless of where we are in the November election, it has to be fair or we've lost our country. We can't make accusations without the proof. Dennis?
Yeah, I had to do a recount when I was running for city council. When I did that, okay, they have to keep all the paperwork from the ballots. So she has paperwork to go back to physically count and look at the thing besides what the tabulator says.
But I do not want to break that chain of custody in case something bigger happens. What I want to do is go down there and do it and just count one of them and see how accurate, but I don't want to do anything to destroy the
Why
integrity
don't
of that.
you run for county,
This politics stuff is crazy.
maybe we need a secretary to ask questions.
Mr. Lashaway.
Lance,
Why not just have them take the vote on the ballots and then have the board count it?
yeah, that's
That's it.
a hand count.
And count, that's it.
think I have any choice if I'm actually gonna uphold an election. I just.
And then you have people watch them count, and that's how
Absolutely.
you do it.
Absolutely.
If I could
Does
real
the
quick.
attorney tell you that we don't have the right to vote to do it that way?
Ask it one more time, I'm sorry.
Did the attorney tell you that we don't have the right as a community to vote?
To choose how we're gonna run it?
Yeah.
Yes, they say in the state statutes that the Secretary of State has now implemented a uniform voting system. And then it's determined, and it passes right on down.
So the next step needs to be, there are a lot of other small communities like us, and we need to get an attorney and contact these others and a
Yes.
class action suit
Yes.
against the state to allow us to choose how to run our own election.
At least reject what has been apparently determined possibly just by one entity, but yes, and
We're
I'm
not the only small district, we need to band together to fix this,
Yes.
because the big cities are not trying to.
no,
Yeah, the question back there first has been waiting.
If I could, there's two groups in Michigan that have come together to do a forensic audit in the state of Michigan. One was Steve Carp, wrote a bill, it's HB 5091. We helped with that bill, it's got a very good wording. We used a lot of the evidence that came out of Arizona. We used what worked for them and what didn't work for them. We used that in the bill to make sure that we've got a good solid bill. Now, there's enough votes in the House right now to pass that bill HB 5091. The Senate's blocking it. The nice thing is, right behind it on its heels is a citizens initiative that has exactly the same wording in it. Exactly the same wording. We have to collect 500,000 signatures on that to do a full forensic audit. The beautiful thing is one group had Johan Pulitzer in, that is he's a tech guru. And so he's very detail oriented on what needs to be checked on these ballots, because these ballots are not printed by the government, they're printed by a private company. And all this stuff is contracted out to a private company. People that we don't elect, people that we don't have any control over, should not be having any control over our elections. Because we are not a democracy because we vote. We vote, as Thomas Jefferson said, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just power from the consent of the governed. So the vote is only to test the consent of the governed. So there's a couple things that are coming out that will help with that. And there's a lot of information.
But here's the problem, it doesn't help for November, because February 12th, the Bureau of Elections said, go ahead, destroy your chain of custody. And how many people did? Likely a bunch of them did. They, especially in big cities, I'm sure they cut their what do you call it, chain of custody straps.
Yep.
And so November's done, unless some people start standing up.
That's an unlawful order.
Exactly, and the attorneys I've been talking to want to address this as a violation of Michigan Statute 153. So there is, I got some stuff going in the background, but I wanted you guys all to know, I wanted the board to know, I wanted support from the board that this tabulator is suspect based on our two elections. Easy as that. Not tested, online potentially. Whether it is or not, that's what we've got to determine, or somebody's got to determine for us. Yes?
Yes, I would seek the advice of your legal counsel and secure this equipment and all the evidence you have so far. That can't be left here. You're gonna find this place on fire one night.
I know.
I'm serious.
I know.
The
I know.
ramifications of this is far
Especially
beyond
after
this
this.
township
That's
hall.
right.
And you need to seek the advice of your legal counsel to secure that equipment.
If it's like that here, it's like that in every county. Yeah, that's going on in every county.
There's definitely a possibility.
I say we vote
Take this out of the box. How about same time?
to handle our elections the way we want to handle our elections, and let the state challenge us.
That's sort of where I'm at, to just run this in November as a hand count.
Can I say this one?
Just a minute, we got some other people that want to weigh in. Okay, Mrs. Makas? No? Okay. Pastor Otto has been waiting.
I just got a comment. We might not be able to do much in this election. What's coming up in November, it might be too late now. but here's what I would suggest. That the board get behind you and the community get behind this board, because when one stands up, there'll be other small ones that follow, and when there's enough small ones that follow, I just heard a statistic, I don't know if it's true or not, there's 80% of the people are starting to push back, and we don't hear that in the news because they're not gonna do it, so 80%, so I'm saying someone needs to stand up, and I applaud you for doing that, and I applaud you for pushing back, and I just say, board get behind her, and community get behind the board.
And
Whatever
I
it
do
takes.
have some attorneys outside of our board that are working on
Yeah.
with other townships. So stay tuned. If we have to have a special meeting to update, I'm not ready to do so yet. I've been advised not to, based on what they think should be happening. And it's not that I'm keeping it from you, it's just, it's still rolling right now. But it's all we'll find out by October 26th for that public accuracy test.
So let me make a comment quick before we take more comments. We as officials didn't swear to obey the law. We swore to support the U.S. Constitution, the Michigan Constitution, to fulfill the duties of our position to the best of our responsibility. If that law they have written is a sneaky way to circumvent freedoms and liberties, then we need to waive it as officials. It's not an easy task for us to do, okay? There's a lot of things we might not understand or know. And what's frustrating is when you do reach out for legal counsel, and they don't know hardly what you know. It's very frustrating.
Well, maybe one other thing to bring up that kind of goes towards that, and I started on it. When we got these machines through the HAVA grant, so like I said, we took possession 2018. I was looking to see if there is actually state statute that says these things have to be online, right? Because that's what they're telling us. We gotta assure you guys all these, they're the safest and securest and they're not online. And, okay, now I'll admit, I was at work and I was just kind of breezing through it, and I'll kind of read fast anyway, but I didn't see anything. But when I started going through it, there were all these statutes that had been repealed, but whatever. Went through Reddit, I could find nothing that says they have to be offline, which I thought was kind of strange. So then when I kind of rolled back up again and I was looking at all these statutes, 28 out of 32 state election statutes were repealed effective December of 2018. That's like, you know, and I haven't had the time to go back and see if one, and I'm pretty sure there's one of them in there that says they have to be offline. And the attorneys that I'm working with said it's gone out of the law. So, again, I don't have the official memo or, you know, confirmation from attorneys on that, but that's interesting, that 18 statutes reversed the same year we got these tabulators. That no one has any real custody / control over the whole thing.
I have some information here, and it comes from 2018. It's an article written by the New York Review, and it mentions this specific tabulator. I'm going to just go to the most important part. Election Systems and Software LLC and Dominion Voting account for about 80% of the U.S. election equipment. A third company, Hart Intercivic, whose E-Slate machines have recently been reported to be flipping early votes in the current Senate race in Texas between Beto O'Rourke and Ted Cruz, accounts for another 11%. And if you go on to the article a little bit later, a little further down, it says, contrary to popular belief, all such equipment can be hacked via the internet because all such equipment must receive programming before each election from memory cards or USB sticks prepared on the country's election management system, which connects to the internet.
That's the EMS, that's that brains that I told you is over at the county clerk's
So,
office.
at the very least, in my opinion, this thing should be abandoned and set aside.
My IT contacts, like at work and stuff, said there is a device that you can bring next to that machine and it will tell you if it's sending out a signal. So to me, that's a basic thing, is to turn this thing on and have some IT that will do something like that.
Detect it on your phone, you might be able to detect it on your phone.
I don't think you can, because it's a different
Well, if it
direction
has a
or
cell card,
something.
if it has a cell card, you either put it on Bluetooth or Wi-Fi, and it detects everybody,
Oh, so
the little things.
Yeah. But that's beyond my IT.
Did you get any ballots that they just mailed out to people?
Did I what?
The secretary here mailed out ballots. We have one girl in our church got 10 of them with different names on it, because she's renting an apartment. My son got one in North Carolina.
extra
Were
ballot?
they actual ballots or applications?
No, they weren't, no, they just, because of the COVID thing, this is all part of the deal, that they said, well, we don't want people going and exposing themselves at the election, so they just mailed out ballots.
Well, no, let me explain how that works, and I can't speak for Texas, but how it works here in Michigan. There's an absentee ballot list that is maintained. And actually, I've got an anomaly that's tied to that too, which I might as well share with you guys. So there's an AV, you can request to be put on the permanent AV list. I have a deadline in which I need to go print off and print off the AV ballot applications. Those have to come back to me with a signature that I need to verify in there, and once I have that, then I can send the actual ballot out, right?
But didn't the state secretary send ballots out just to be voted on?
No.
Yes.
I would think that would be, I don't know.
I don't think so.
I don't know. But here's the thing, in this AV one, so I don't remember what the deadline was for me sending out AV ballots, but it was about 2 weeks ago. And I went in on a Thursday, because I just wanted to see how many I was gonna have to be handling. And I ran the report, and it was 333. That's about right, whatever. I went in that weekend then to do my AV ballots, and I had gotten a phone call the day before from someone, a township person, and her and her husband wanted an AV, get on the AV list, or wanted an AV application. And I said, yep, and I know her, so I was gonna look for her name. When I went in 3 days later, the quantity on my AV list dropped by one person, which seems really strange to have a database report that changes numbers in the middle of the whole thing. Because so that would mean if I printed on that day and all of a sudden there's one less, somebody's got an application, right? And it's just an application. But they got an application that's not valid anymore? I don't know. So day one was 333. 3 days later, it was 332 on the list. And I printed, and when I printed, I noticed this gal's name and her husband. So I'm like, okay, cool. For whatever reason, it's in there. But I bump over and there's an inbox in there. And that's supposed to be all the new that come in. So I go over to my inbox and I'm supposed to process right from there. Her and her husband's name are right there too. So had I not been watching for her, she would have got 2 applications for sure. Then if anyone would have caught it prior to, there's a potential that I could get both those applications back for her and send her 2 ballots. Unless I happen to catch it, but I was watching for her. So anyway, her and her husband were in my inbox, and there were 2 more, which I went and checked. They were already on my list. They already had theirs printed. So now I have 4. So I have 4 in my inbox. My ballot report is 1 less. And then I ran out of paper, so I went in 2 days later again and ran it. And now my AV list is down to 331, so it's dropped again. And I have 5 in my inbox that are already on the AV list, so it's duplicating. And I just get told by the county clerk, merge it. I said, I'm not merging it. And of course, I've taken screenshots and have all my documentation. So now I've got 5. So if you do the math, 1.2% of my AV list is duplicated in that QBF voting system. What do I do with that? Other than I'm gonna manage it individually to make sure. But if I hadn't, and when I check names, the names are all spelled exactly the same. There's no way it should get to the township clerk at that level and have duplicates. But, just working in databases, if you could put in a glitch that anybody on the AV list calls in, a week later after ballots go out and it creates a new entry, that's a great way to get duplicates. But I don't know that yet. I don't.
What about people though that never requested the AV to be on mailing list?
I don't know, I haven't come across anyone like that.
Me, my family, everyone in my household got one, and we go to the ballots to vote.
Did the Secretary of State send some out
Oh,
before the
yeah.
whole thing? Okay.
I got 10 of them, my son got one.
I wasn't here in November, so I cannot speak to that. I don't want to speak to that.
Comment on that.
No.
It was common knowledge that Jocelyn Benson broke election law. It is Michigan election law. She broke it. They're not going to prosecute her. Why would they prosecute you under the 14th Amendment? You're supposed to both have equal protection of the law. They're not going to prosecute her. It seems to me they shouldn't prosecute you.
I'm not afraid to take it. I would like the board to support me on this whole thing, no matter where it leads. I'm not going to say I'm going to deliberately break the law, but I do believe firmly that these elections have to be fair. They have to be accurate, they have to be traceable. And it cannot be left to one entity to print the ballots, to test it, to maintain it, to, you know, whatever they're gonna do. I mean, if you go digging into it, they say on these machines, when you bring them in for maintenance, they take the battery out. And how many things do you have around your house that reset completely once the battery's removed? And that's what they're saying they're doing to these things. Take the battery out, resets the whole thing. But just so you know, I'm the only clerk in Hillsdale County that didn't turn hers in, so I'm gonna go with my life for a while.
I
But
do want to comment a couple things, and we're not closing this out just yet, because I want everybody to appreciate you coming, and I want you all to have a chance to say anything that's pertinent. But, I'm glad Mr. Benzing made it here, our county commissioner, and, that he's gotten in on most of this. Stephanie, you told me that the county clerk will not answer you directly. For how long now?
I haven't talked to Marty since, this was March, probably end of March, the last time we argued about
Have you
how many.
attempted to talk to her and she will not talk to you?
No, I have not reached out. Abe talks to me, Abe reaches out and just says that him and I get along, so that's fine. I like Abe, but he's just as new to this as me. He went through the QBF training and all that kind of stuff, same time I did in January. So he's just as new to this whole voting situation, from my understanding, as I am. And so I would expect, when I've raised as much fuss as I have, that the county clerk would jump in on this, but not yet.
And I see an awful lot are from Adams, but I appreciate the ones that are from other areas as well. Cambry's represented, Moscow's represented, we have some other townships. Brad, of course, lives down in Woodbridge, county commissioner. Somerset, good, that's right. And Hillsdale.
Litchfield?
Thank you.
Mr. Supervisor, you also have road commissioner, you're in
Yes,
Ladner,
down to the
CD,
right.
for Bank Township.
Yes.
Okay, good.
So I'm glad that we have a variety here. As the lady mentioned, you know, there should be other governmental entities that if one leads, others may follow. I think this falls heavily on Stephanie's shoulders because it's her responsibility.
Well,
But
stay
she wants-
tuned, stay
she wants
tuned on
to
that.
know that the people on the board
Yes.
have her back.
But stay tuned on that, because I don't have that clarified, that it is clerk's responsibility to maintain records, either physical or electronic. I don't have verification that it's only me. It could very well be just as much you guys, and that's what I will find out in the next week or two with what I'm working on. And then if it falls on the township board, then you guys really have to be interested in it too. But as for now, I'm sort of in a holding pattern until the 26th, until I hear back on the whole thing. But I would like to make a formal motion that we agree as a board, we're not going to use this tabulator in November unless there's some kind of IT inspection or something that can happen to it to prove that it's not going to get erased with the new program.
Okay, so, I'll ask to hold off on the second. That was a motion.
Yes.
Does anyone else have anything that they want to say or comment? Mrs. Bailey?
I'm wondering what you're going to do to validate your process if you're not going to use the process that has been given to you. Because how do we know who we can trust on this? And we have to know ahead of the vote what the process is going to be and how it's going to be judged.
Yeah, and I would assume, because, so, on these school millages, back in January, might have been early February, Marty Cass, county clerk, called all us clerks together, because we have all these school elections, and, you know, like, Adams Township has 5 schools and whatever, so we have this charter agreement. That's why the physical election for North Adams Jerome is here, but there'll be, I think, at least 4 other townships that the clerk will sit in the office and take same-day registrants, and then eventually drop off her AV ballots. That means people that voted over there to bring and drop off. So we've had these charter agreements on this whole thing. I forgot where I was going. You said validate the process.
I want to know if you're going to not use this process, what process do you have in place?
I don't have
that's
any.
going to be better.
I don't have anything yet, and that's what it's gonna have to be, reach out, and I think to the county clerk. We had to have held elections before we got this in 2018. I mean, it's gotta be as easy as throwing, you know, having people put it in a, oh, that was my point. Through this charter thing, the county clerk has selected my election inspectors. So I've called Jackie Cook so far and explained my situation. She was out of town, or she would have been here tonight, and she's just as concerned. I haven't called my other 4 yet, but I want to share this video with them. But I would assume that in conjunction with them and with the county, if they're gonna support us or what they're gonna do. I would believe they'd be the same ones that would count, we just count hard copies, and whether, the canvassing board, which would be Pat and Mark and I, witness it. It's open, should be open to the public, just like regular ballot counting at the end of the night is open to the public. I mean, I gotta believe there's a way we do it, because we did it for this thing in 2018. But I don't have an answer on that yet.
Mr. Leininger in the back.
We'd just like to go back in history a little bit. Got involved in county government in 1976 when I ran for the Board of Commissioners. And we had 2 precincts in Wright Township at that time. The one in Waldron was on the old machines, but the one in Prattville was entirely paper ballot. And there were other townships. Amboy Township was on paper ballots for a long time, even after I became county treasurer. Ransom Township was on paper ballots, for a long time. I think some of those townships were on paper ballots right up until 2002, because after the election of 2000, when you had the hanging chads in Florida, that's when the computers first came to play in the election process. Was either 2002 or 2004. But prior to that, there were a number of townships in Hillsborough County that were always, they voted paper ballots, they counted them. Yeah, there was a process in place, and it worked.
So in 3 weeks. Well, and even if we do the paper ballot, if it's not gonna be validated by the state, then does the school not get their money because it's not an official election?
I don't have an answer on that.
Well, we're talking 3 weeks.
Oh, I know, trust me, I know.
Well,
I'm sort of a basket case on the whole thing, I know how much work, but that doesn't mean we can't pursue it. I think we have to, we have a moral obligation to make sure that this
but
is
I'm
covered.
saying, maybe you need to think about the implications.
Trust me, I have, and that's what I'm working
3
with.
weeks is not a lot of time.
Trust me, I know, and I work full-time outside of this, so yes, I know that. But I don't
But
feel
you
morally
have
that,
a major impact on how the school functions the rest of the year.
that's why it's important.
But that's not
So
an
what
answer.
happens if we do away with this machine, and we go to paper ballot, and the state says those votes don't count?
No, I don't know.
Serious?
I know.
Because if those
This
votes
is-
don't count, you might as well not come to
This
vote.
is huge, but what difference, I'm
It
just saying,
does
what,
make a difference.
what difference does it make if we're going to sit, we have got a very unique opportunity on these tabulators with 2 very simple elections. We are unique in the state, I believe I'm the only one that ran an election in March. So we're unique, it's easy to explain to people, I mean, I didn't even try to draw up in November, but that's a whole other, this is what they give us to show that they're tabulated. I don't know how to read it. So, how many of us was going through and signing off on things?
But did you not say that the state says that all townships will use these machines? Is that what you said?
A uniform voting
Uniform,
system.
yeah.
But the
Correct.
attorneys that I've been talking to say a uniform voting system is not the same as a uniform voting machine. And that's where the semantics are gonna come in, and it's gonna take some legal backbone on this whole thing to make it work.
But then you're saying that if we do away with this, if we vote today to do away with this, and we run the election in three weeks, we run an election in 3 weeks, we do away with this, and we go to all paper, and the state says, we don't recognize those votes, they don't count. What do we do
Send
then?
one more dime tonight.
That's when you take their.
What, hold on now, you guys are sitting there, but if the operating millage does not pass for that school doesn't function.
So it shuts down the next day is what you're saying?
It does,
Completely
basically.
locks the doors the next day.
I'm telling you right now.
I have
they
a hard
will
time
lose.
believing it's that dramatic
Okay.
if it's in the middle of something like this.
There's the president of the school board right there.
I think if you look at the documentation, it's going to commit, the village does not continue, we're going to use $440,000, which out of our budget is about 1/3 of our staff. I don't know if that.
Dependent on government for our school.
Yes.
We're not depending on the government.
If you're willing to run an election that's sketchy just to get your money,
I'm not saying
there's
that.
no end to the corruption on this.
Okay, I don't think Mrs. Taylor was through.
Oh, sorry.
No, I'm just saying, I think you have to look at the major impact, and 3 weeks in this battle that you are looking at.
I've got 2 weeks to get a lot of legwork done.
But what damage are you doing to this community?
I'm still sending out AD ballots, I'm doing everything that I would normally do. Everything's happening just as it is.
But if the state doesn't recognize what your procedure is.
I haven't done anything different, I've done nothing different at this point. The drop dead date on this is gonna be the 27th at the public accuracy test that would potentially reprogram that. That's my drop dead date. I have followed all legal, I'm doing everything with AD, nothing has changed as far as this election, and it won't until October 27th, when and if a USB port is stuck into that machine that potentially deletes anything that's happened in the past. And I'm not willing to do that at this point. I have to fight it. I mean, I have to. I can't think of it any other way.
Did you say you would get, I'm sorry, Steve, did you say that you would get word on the 26th?
I have to, because that's supposed to run on the 27th.
And
I have to. So, yes, I've got a lot of work in the next 2 weeks, and I've got a lot of conversations.
are you waiting for someone to report to you on the 26th? Will it come
No,
before you?
I'm hoping it comes this week. I have a little bit more
Okay.
direction.
I'm wondering if there should be, after you get your next, report there, if we should hold a special meeting.
And maybe tonight's vote is just a symbolic vote to show support on the whole thing. And I'm fine with that. I get it. It's not like, I don't know who decides all this stuff. I can't believe it all falls on me, but I believe I've got a lot of responsibility on it.
Are you asking for a vote of support?
Just a minute, just a minute, there's people waiting, hold on. Steve had his hand up, but we have, Glenn in the back that also, you want Glenn to go ahead? Steve, go ahead.
A school will close. If it closes, so be it. What would you rather have, a closed school or a broken election system that we don't know anything about? It's a fight for our country. We got this right to vote. We should have the right to have it proper. I can't believe the state would say paper ballots not proper, especially when they vote on paper to begin with.
And do remember what Mr. Rutan said about the 14th Amendment and equal protection. Is he still with us?
No.
He left?
Yeah.
The Secretary of State, the highest person responsible for elections, has already violated the law.
How is that?
She sent out ballots, but even the absentee, unsolicited. Who do you want to take, who's next? We have quite a few that want to talk.
Okay, first of all, what do you do if the machine fails the test?
I might work with the county and figure out what's.
Okay, they're just gonna bring out a new machine?
I've read that other companies have done that, or townships have had that happen, that the manufacturer brings out new machines to run.
Okay.
My thought process is to see if the county's gonna support me in this, with one of their tabulars, run it that way. I just don't want that machine running it.
Okay, next question. Do they supply you with USB sticks to reprogram?
County does, yes.
Okay, so in USB world and in software world, a lot of those sticks, discs, whatever you want to call them, have an auto run cycle. They'll go in and wipe out enough space in the memory to clear it all out. However, it doesn't mean that information is gone, okay, until you unplug the battery. Once you unplug the battery, you have a different world. But up to this point, you could plug another stick in there and clear out what you need to do to run the election on that and not lose what you already have. Now, I don't know that for a fact on that, but that's 90% of the way they work.
And what worries me is that I have indicated my concern on the machine.
Right.
And within 24 hours, it was reported to the Michigan Bureau of Election, and I got that threatening letter. That's the part that concerns me,
Right.
because if they have a heads up, I have a concern. Don't tell me they're not gonna program that USB stick to erase. And that's what I don't wanna do.
Yeah.
But there are other machines in
And
the township.
they could have that auto run on that USB stick.
But in my mind, there's other tabulators. I'm the only clerk that didn't turn in. So if we all really care about this, we should be able to band together and use somebody else's tabulators, maintained and, all that kind of stuff. and run it like normal.
Can you
And so
back
those
up
are-
what's on that machine?
I can. So I was showing you that, it's all sealed up. That's where the discussion is
So that
opportunities
if
on
it
that.
does get erased by the new one that goes in, you have it back up.
Ding, ding, ding.
They have several other stuff.
Do you feel comfortable with a different machine?
That's what I'm saying, another township's machine or the county provides them or something? Yeah, because they've all turned theirs in and I would suspect they're cleared off, so, yeah, that's my backup plan. I don't know if that's feasible or not. I'm gonna find other townships that are a part of the school district, so that might be an option.
I just think it's.
It is dangerous, but this
dangerous way to
country,
live if we don't
I
have
agree.
a plan in place.
But
You
the
must
difference-
vote on something when you don't know what you're gonna replace it with. Well, if you vote.
We've ran paper ballots before in this country.
Yes.
It's been done.
I understand that, I know, I've seen them.
Yeah.
But I mean, I'm concerned about how valid that vote is going to be. And if you don't have that validation before you do it, you could be.
I understand your concern, yes, it is mine also. Because it's not my intent is to disrupt this election, but I do feel it's very important to have fair elections in this country. And this is unique, this is extremely unique in, I don't know the state, I don't know all the details on the Antrim County recount. They seem to be approaching it more from the 80 ballots that are sent out. I haven't heard that anybody's really looking at the programming on this thing, other than it's known that these things are online. So then it's a matter of which clerks are gonna turn this in and open this up and let somebody test this, other than Election Source or whoever the vendor is that, we haven't voted for, we have no idea who they are. Yeah.
In regards to authentication, and validation of as such, we can either question an individual that's local with the voting and the election integrity, or we can just blindly assume the trust that we have in a private sector that writes 200 million lines of binary code into a program that can, as this gentleman said, automatically run its own program in 2.5 milliseconds before you even know to blink your eyes once. And then, we see a lot of these, problems and also concerns of yours spread throughout the entire country. And we are not the only group of people that feel this way. And I think your concerns are well-founded, well-rooted, and I fully support of course, there is disruption. But, what else was America, really founded on other than just disruption of the normal way of things? And the voice of the people need to shine through. And frankly, the honesty of the whole thing doesn't ring a bell with me. It seems a whole lot far out there, especially when 80% of the elections held from East Coast to West Coast is all verified and programmed and decided and ciphered under one roof. That doesn't make me feel easy.
Just abdicating the rights of the township. In the past, it was
I'm in
the
full
township.
support. I'm in full support of what your concerns are.
I'm sorry. Somebody else.
Either one, yeah.
So your choice pretty much is to run paper ballots, do your election that way, and then you're going to run up against whether the state's gonna take it or not. If the state takes it, then you win. If the state doesn't take it, then you have to sue the state. And you are gonna be the first ones to do that. That's your choice right now. And if you're worried about the
I
school,
fully
and
understand.
if you're worried about your schools, last I checked, when I wrote a check for my taxes, it goes to the township, not the state. You guys are still gonna have that money to give to the school.
No,
How are you not gonna have the money to give to the
no,
school?
it's part of our curriculum before we,
Has county clerk's office refused you a different calculator?
I haven't asked. Again, this is all in the last week or two, and I felt like I needed to get my ducks in a row to even share this information with somebody and be able to explain and support it. So no, I have not asked that question yet. It's been in my thought process that that's an option in order to preserve that machine. Gary?
Just a couple of thoughts. As county county treasurer, I served on the county election commission. So the county clerk is not the sole authority when it comes to elections. The county election commission is comprised of the county clerk, the probate judge, and the county treasurer. I don't know if you were aware of that. I mean, to me, ask for a meeting with the county election commission, not just the county clerk, to sort out these issues. And then the second thing, to me, it doesn't seem possible that a local school election would go any farther than the county board of canvassers. I can't imagine that would get set onto the state board of canvassers to certify a local election for a school village. So I think that's another key question you need to ask.
Now I want everybody to know, Gary Leininger, just in case you know, he's been a county commissioner, county treasurer for 36 years?
36 years.
Now serving as the road commissioner, so he's got lots of experience. I appreciate the comment here.
Sure.
Mr. Minkus had, he's been trying for a while.
This has really been informative. It's beyond me. These people are very knowledgeable here. It's amazing what people are knowing here. I want to applaud you for what you are doing. I mean, as someone said, I'm in full support of what I can't believe you've done this. I mean, wonderful. I wonder if Representative Andrew Fink could be of help to you in moving this along.
Well, he knows of it through his father, because Jim Fink, his
Right.
father is our.
But I mean, he's got an office, he's got people that work for him. I mean, if this question about these ballots, it would seem to me he could get somebody in his group to find out the bottom line. I mean, you can do other things too with your attorneys, but, I mean, he's our representative, and he's a constitutionalist, right? I mean, yeah, I mean, I would think he would be a resource to help you maybe work through this in your short time span. I mean, I guess I would encourage it. He's very easy to talk to. I've had many conversations with him, but.
Well, I figured tonight we'll open this wide up, so.
Yeah.
If the word's gonna get out, we'll see what.
I just, whatever, you're just doing a bang up job. I really appreciate it.
We got two people, we got, Steve, lady.
Now, in regards to, if they say it's an illegitimate vote, now, like, if we vote on paper and they say that that's illegitimate, we can't get money, whatever, well, wouldn't that mean that we would have to do another vote? Not that it would be, we wouldn't get the money, or we wouldn't get the money, they can't make a determination if it's an illegitimate vote. Right. So we need to see what would happen if they called it illegitimate. And then would they just make us vote again? Would they make us use the machines?
Use another tabulator.
Right,
I
right.
think if I really wanted to blow it up, I'd just do 10 count, not worry about it, and I'm not saying that's what I think we should do. The probably more logical, just because of the time frame we're on, is to see if we can get some agreement to use somebody else's machine to protect the integrity of this one.
Hold on, just a minute. Mr. Meyer, if I'm not mistaken, what you said was if the paper vote here went on, it would go no further than the Hillsdale County canvassers, right?
Well, that's my assumption. I don't know that for a fact. So my question to your clerk is, she needs to pursue that, with the county clerk and the board of elections to see, does a local ballot issue go on to the state board of canvassers? I've never heard that it did.
Okay, so if they did a paper vote and the county canvassers certified that vote, then it possibly would go to the state in that direction as certified by the canvassers of the county? Is that what I'm thinking? Maybe?
Possibly, if that's what's required, I don't know that that's required. My thought was that if you did a paper ballot and it was certified by the county board of canvassers, the election is over. It stands. If it passed, it passed. If it failed, it failed.
He's talking about county level, you're talking about state level.
I'm talking about the county level having to answer to the state level. The money for the school comes from the state, right? That's supplied from the township, okay? So we got a big circle here.
Yeah.
Right? So if the county certifies by county canvassers, is that certification good enough to go to the state and say, yeah, we passed the vote this way or that way?
And that's the question.
That's the question we need to have answered within the next 2 weeks, right? Whether or not the paper vote would be certified by the Hillsdale County canvassers, and then does it go to the state or does it stay there? So that's probably the best question that we have answered.
But it's not a state election, it's a county election.
I know that, but in order for the school to get the money, it all has to go back to the state at this juncture. Right, you give them $20, they give you back 10.
I'm sorry, Leo, I'm gonna try to do a while, I'm sorry.
All right, last year, we had COVID.
Let's keep it down for a second, please.
The schools were closed several times. We had a lot of students that had trouble. We had one in summer school all summer. I don't wanna take a chance of the school closing down again because the millage was the vote was illegal or whatever.
So the
We
school
cannot-
is more important than a fair election in this country.
We've got children to think about.
And we have future children that if our elections are not fair,
Well, we
means
can
nothing.
pick our fight on some
We
other
need
one.
to prove that. By who? The people that programmed it? That's the issue. That's like the hen guarding the fox guarding the hen house. It's the same people. That's my point on presenting this. The very people that are programming it are likely the ones that are going to maintain it by taking out the batteries. And I can't believe the risk that's involved. And I can't take.
Everybody else did it, but you.
Right? I have to ask the questions, and all the research there's so many warning signs. You can't just follow people. So.
No, the rights, no more rights, you got no more rights.
Oh.
War, I'll be at war.
Is everybody aware that this next election in 3 weeks is not a bond issue? It's an operating bill. And it's a renewal.
Yeah, that's what I said, my issue isn't with what's coming on the ballot in November. The issue is by putting in something on this.
It's fine that you picked this election to do.
I couldn't do it. I contested the March one. That was not enough ballots. And when he came back and said it's 7 ballots for a one question, my response is, if 7 ballots is enough for a one question election, how can 7 ballots have been enough for a 2 question? And that's this all has exploded into me because that does not make logical sense. March's election was not tested. And that's what's on this machine until I stick another USB port in here and it either deletes it, removes it, covers it. I don't know. I can't see what's going into the machine.
Abe Bain was here last month and explained a lot of stuff to us. And he said nothing is stored on that machine except the software to read that. He said it's all on that.
It's not true. You read how these machines are set up, there's hardware on these machines.
If you put something in there, how can you guarantee that it doesn't change any software? I'm not a computer expert, but.
The old vote is not on that machine. It's not stored on that machine. It's stored on the memory stick that is turned
That they told us to delete.
And it's stored on the votes that you have.
That's, I don't know that I believe it, knowing it's a window-based system. And that's something as a board, I'm not sure we have the collective IT knowledge to determine.
None of us have the IT knowledge to
Exactly.
understand any of this.
Exactly.
This is way above, but as long as you have the paper ballots, you can count the paper ballots and see if it.
That would be what a forensic audit is, and that is not right now part of this whole thing. Do I go down and break all those seals down there and just test it for my own
I
knowledge?
just break the one and see how close it comes. And also, this thing on the wall here, this is gonna be valid no matter what. I mean, you're gonna be able to compare and say they gave you 7 for this and 7 for that, even after this election.
That's not right.
Right. But if there's programming that shows this particular combo, so say this election tested for these probably at least 3 of these, it's definitely gonna test for the nothing votes. So say it tested for this, and this. What if that means this one points to this one and this one points, and there's a whole computer logic to this whole thing that's way beyond me, because I'm not a computer programmer. But this stuff can be programmable. That's the point. It's not, each of these combos are not tested, and it's potentially online. That should be all we know. Or you need to know on the whole thing.
I agree. A forensic audit is gonna tell a lot.
Correct, but it's not in this state. It's not part of our state statute. They're trying to pass laws. It's gonna happen after this.
This could be the key piece
It
to
could
the
be.
whole deal right here, because it's the only one that hasn't been turned in yet. So we know for a fact, this one's got true information on it. When you say it's only stored on a stick, to get to the stick, it has to go through, like the hard drive on it, okay?
Should be a record somewhere.
There's a record on that.
And
What it does is print the stick out. But if you open that up, or you plug another autoplay stick in there, all bets are off.
Well, that's what I was saying, when this document that I found that was criticized when we were looking through it, there's a particular piece of hardware called Rally that takes and connects the two. And it's my understanding it's still in there. And that's what we need to find out. If it is still in there and it's accessible to change how it's counted, it's huge. Is this what's gonna break it wide open? I don't know, but I think it's a part of the puzzle on the whole thing, because I think there's a whole other AB ballot application issue. There's, signature verification, there's all kinds of stuff. But to me, this tabulator and this counter it's key on this. Especially.
Just a minute, Stephanie said we had people waiting to talk back there. Lori?
There's gotta be an old law out there that there's a default, We don't trust these machines, and there has to be an old law out there. I'd like to see you do a paper ballot, and I'd like you to be really careful with the motion you guys make tonight, whatever that motion is. But I really support you, and I appreciate your efforts on this. I'll look up an old law for you.
If you would, yeah, I think
will
it's
do my best.
163, and like I say, there's 18 that repealed, December of 18. It's in one of those, I'm sure. Because I look up some old statutes.
I'll get with you on that.
That'd be awesome.
I'm just not sure that, I don't trust the machines either. From the last election, I get that, I do. But I'm not gonna base, the future of the school or the future of the kids who go to that school on a what if. Maybe it'll pass, maybe it'll go to the state, maybe the state will give us the funding, maybe this will be the beginning of something different, maybe. I'm not gonna base it on a maybe, for me. Now, I see what happens.
You're basically on maybe this happens.
You don't know. If we vote this machine down, if we vote to get rid of this machine, that's one thing.
Yeah, you got
But then you're not, then you guaranteeing that those paper ballots are gonna pass? That those are gonna be good through the state?
don't know
That
that
we're not
we
gonna
can
lose
answer.
it?
We want a ballot.
Are you guaranteeing that machine's kosher?
No, I'm not saying that.
You just said you don't trust it.
I
So how
don't.
am I supposed to, this is too
But
much.
I don't trust that the state's gonna pass those paper
That's what
ballots
we're
that they
here
said
for.
are illegal.
Well, here's what I would say, I won't say compromise, but if it's as easy as using another township's tabulator and letting this thing go through whatever needs to be done to verify it, we've got the best of both worlds, right? How else do we do it? I understand doing paper ballots is a risk. If I get attorneys that will support and somehow direct me on all that, what a uniform voting system is, and if that's the same as a uniform ballot voting machine, then that's a whole other issue. But if I don't have that by the 26th, seems like an easy way to do it is find another township, whether it's through the clerk's office or whatever. And then it's the best of both worlds.
Where's the guarantee that you're gonna get one? We've got 3
I
weeks.
don't have it, and that's what I'm telling you, I had to start somewhere, and the start was to educate people on this whole thing, so you know what the issues are, it's been presented to you. I think your attitude is very short-sighted, but that's yours to have. I understand your passion for the school, I get that, but this is big for this country, it's huge. We don't need to be Venezuela, we're turned into Venezuela by the lack of control of these machines. And I don't have the power, and the county clerk doesn't have
answers. And so I think what I'm hearing you say is you're asking for the go-ahead to be able to get the answers that you need so that we're dealing with concrete things, not just speculative things. Like getting maybe something like, what's it called, cyber ninjas, or someone that can answer those technical questions, getting the lawyers that can answer the legal questions, and putting together, in obviously a very short amount of time for you, bless your heart, so that you can come back, maybe we even call a special meeting if that's allowed.
And that's probably what it would be, and just.
And to go forward based on the facts.
And I am 2 weeks into that course. I'm just waiting for the final aspect of the whole thing.
So we're not voting to throw out this machine, we're not voting to throw out or do just paper out. I think what really maybe you would amend your motion to say, I would like to have a vote of confidence that that the board and the township will support me in this fact-finding mission to be able to figure out what we can do to take care of the school and still maintain an honest election. Because we want both, right? Right. So I think that we really can't make any definite decisions based on what's been discussed tonight. We just have an idea of what's happening, and we can beat it to death, but we don't have answers. And so what I'm hearing is that we need to get answers, and you need our support to pursue those answers.
Well, I'm gonna do it anyway, because I've been advised to get my own attorney just by challenging this. I'm gonna do it anyway because I think it's the right thing to do as clerk, if I'm truly responsible for elections.
Do
and if
what?
I'm
Specifically for the group.
see what I can do with this machine as far as any kind of preservation of the integrity of what's on it. And as clerk, having to run elections, and if it's my responsibility for the 22 months maintenance of electronic records, there's a lawsuit involved just because they told us to turn these in and you don't even have to be there. That's.
So you're not, and so what people need to understand is you're not saying, I'm not gonna do the elections right. That's not what you're saying. You're not gonna do anything to jeopardize this election. What you're saying is you're needing permission to go forward to deal with this machine.
I don't think I need permission.
Well, whatever it is that your motion.
I need to, I guess my motion is that we agree this machine is highly suspect based on the fact I've got a March election that was not tested, and that it is online based on everything that I can pull out. This machine is suspect. My intent is still to run the election, it is still to get it, whether it needs another tabulator or if it's, I don't know. I don't know the answer. All I want is to know that this thing is suspect, and that the board supports the findings or the information that's presented, or we'll do their own research and do it.
And I want to say something before we get any more questions. There's a couple people yet, one that hasn't spoke at all, one that really wants to speak yet. You have the most power to call a special election, clerk. Okay? I can request you to.
Special election or special meeting?
Special meeting, I'm sorry. Yes, thank you for clarifying that. Special meeting. You can call a special meeting. Okay? There's other ways to call a special meeting. The clerk has the power to call a special meeting. So, you know, you just call it. You have that power.
They're likely to be one once I get some.
Yes, and it may be needful. There are other ways too. I believe as supervisor, can request or order you to call a special election as well.
Meeting.
And there's a third way.
Meeting, he keeps saying election.
Thank you. Special meeting, not a special election. So, want the audience to know that can be, and Stephanie well knows that she has that authority. Can I take Mr. Hitt? He hadn't spoken yet. Or I guess he did once, but.
I would recommend that anybody that represents another township, go and check out their township clerk and see if they follow the unlawful directives and drink the Kool-Aid.
And they likely did, and I don't mean this to point fingers, but at some point we gotta start asking questions on this stuff and
With
they're
the election problems that there's been this last year, I'm rather slack-jawed that no other township in this county bothered to do it. It does seem that they just do whatever they're told, and that discusses me.
Common knowledge is supposed to hold the stuff for 22 months.
22 months. Hey folks, this room right here is the foundation of America. meetings around this country, it's happening. I've talked to people in a lot of places. People are fed up. The American people, it doesn't matter what your political party is. We have told the rope for so long, not only for our own country, but for billions around the world. And right now, there's still billions around this world that are looking to the American people for hope. Our foundation's crumbling. This is where it starts, right here. I applaud what you're doing. This has got to go. This could be a cornerstone case. It's got to go. I agree. The kids are our most important resource in this country. I got 12 grandkids. We're heading to 30 trillion in debt. We're around 145 trillion in unfunded liabilities. We're approaching $200 trillion right now in this country. I don't know about you, but I don't have a lot of tax dollars to keep dishing out for all these squirrely ideas and everything. We've got, for us to save our country.
At the school, all we're doing is asking for a renewal.
Yeah, I understand that, sir, but if we lose our country, the last thing you're gonna worry about is your school. Because the thing is that I agree, I support the school, don't get me wrong, I support what we're doing. But we cannot disservice all these patriots from the beginning that have gave their blood, gave their lives, possessions, their money, everything. We have to start somewhere. We can't keep passing the buck. And somewhere we've got to make a choice. Our power is in numbers. We don't have to be violent. We don't have to let these thugs around the country that's burning cities down destroy our mindsets. We're all guilty at some point of sitting at home and saying, we'll let somebody else take care of it. This is the first thing I've seen, and I'm familiar with what Patrick Colbeck has done. This is the first time I've seen anything local. And this is important. We cannot allow them to keep changing the programming. We cannot allow connections to the internet. What was it, 4 countries around the world was giving our election results? Germany, South America, it was all over the place. And what are we doing? All we have to do is put our heads together and decide to stand up. Enough is enough. That's all we have to do.
We the
Sorry.
people.
Thank
We
you.
the people. We're the government.
That's right.
Stephanie is going to pursue certain things here, and I'm willing
Find
to
another
help
way
her.
to take care of our children. If we can't do it through public school, we'll find another way. That doesn't mean that's not the only way to take care of our children. Before there was ever public schools, there was private, county and township schools that where the teachers funded their schools and paid for their teachers and stuff like that. I mean, there's not only one way to take care of our children.
Well, the thing is, if this is going to be, it doesn't really matter what the question is. Whoever's got the question on the ballot, it's important to you. I understand that and I respect that. But facts show there's skepticism in this whole thing. And I can't let the bigger picture go because of this third election running through here.
I just want to let you know, because I go to the courthouse and I watch the proceedings all night long. There's a guy from that company sitting in there to help them.
Elections ours?
Yes. Well, there's always a guy, and I was told they're from the computer to help them. So they don't know everything locally, because every single election I go, I think
You sit in there that night and
I go and wait for results to come in.
And these guys are sitting in there?
I don't know, they're telling me it's the guy from the computer company.
No.
I don't know, I don't have a name. I'm saying it's a guy from our computer company. If they have hiccups, that's who they go to. So when Abe, I like Abe, they all say, do it. This is they don't know everything, because there's every single election I go in and watch the results, and there's a guy in there from the company.
This programming is far beyond what our county clerk's office is doing, far beyond it. And Marty admitted it. It's not really behind her. She says, Stephanie, you're too smart. I don't understand what you're saying. When I was talking about that March election not having enough ballots. And I'm like, oh my gosh, who's determining this? And that's why the print house.
Now we're-
It's terrifying.
Bob Flynn could probably verify that too, because he's in there too. Bob Flynn from the radio station is always in there.
At this, honestly, until I know that there's something that's firmly gonna be okay, I think it should be tabled until you bring it.
Well, I'm not tabling anything. I'm going forward with it with or
And
without
I
board
suggest we
support.
take a vote